Hey, this is Coach Colette, host of the Start Within podcast, and welcome to another episode of Financial Fridays. Well, it's September. I'm not sure how that happened either. This month, we are going to share some tips and ideas around self-care because September is Self-Care Awareness Month. Now, it's very interesting, wouldn't you say, that we all know about the value and the benefits of taking care of ourselves, and yet sometimes it can be challenging to follow through on that knowledge, particularly during this pandemic with sheltering in place and lockdowns, and only now starting to see reopening of places like gyms and other inside gathering places. So what is it that you can do to take care of yourself during this month of September? At Start Within Coaching, we actually host a 7-day self-care challenge, and it's an opportunity for you to really take a look at what you feel your body, your mind, and your spirit need to rejuvenate. And it's important to look at self-care across all of those three levels, to look at what are the things that you can do to improve your physical well-being, your mental well-being, and your emotional or spiritual well-being. And so there are questions that we ask in our guide, which include, how do you feel about taking time for yourself? Often we may feel guilty about putting ourselves first before taking care of others. I would encourage you that during the month of September that you remember what they say on planes. And I know I haven't been on a plane in God knows how long, but what they say is put your own oxygen mask on first before helping others. So I think it's really important, particularly for women, for Black women and other women of color, to really aim to embody this message through the month of September, that we are better able to help others that we care about and that we love, and we're better able to fight for the causes that we believe in and call for the social justice that is desperately needed in this country only if we take care of ourselves first. So really, think about it for today and going into this holiday weekend, if you are listening in the US, what is your self-care action? And think about it. What is something that you can do to either help your mind, your body, or your spirit? That's all for me for now. Now get ready and listen up to today's tip from Singh.
Hello everyone, this is Singh, aka Investing, of the Investing Podcast with your weekly Financial Friday tip. When was the last time you tithed and gave some of your paycheck to a charitable organization or a good cause? I would suggest you do some research and find out what causes mean a lot to you, and so that you can give a portion of your paycheck to that organization or that charity. Remember, the more you give, the more you receive. With that said, that is your weekly Financial Friday tip, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Hey, this is Coach Colette with this week's Unplugged segment. Well, this has been a week. I had my first corona pandemic birthday on Monday, and then got an energetic cosmic whammy with the full moon in Pisces that really knocked me off my game midweek. And so there was a lot of energy shifting and things that I needed to move myself through to get back on game for the rest of the week. It's interesting. I'm going to share a little bit of a story with you about connection, isolation, and community. So before the pandemic, I had on my to-do list, okay, you have to promise not to laugh at me, to finally cut the cord of cable. Yes, I was still connected to cable and paying that amount each month for my TV. And then, of course, we know in March, Corona hit. And I really felt so strongly connected to cable, and I couldn't really figure it out. And then I started to realize that there was a sense of stability. So this sense of disconnecting from something made me feel like I would be disconnected from everyone, that it wouldn't be stable. And I think a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about having similar feelings when that storm Isaias came to New York City and the tree branches were snapping outside of my building. And I had that sense of fear and panic that my home base would become unsafe. It's interesting to think, it's just content coming across wires. And yet I had the same feeling that if I disconnected the cable, I wouldn't be safe and I wouldn't be connected. Well, that is no longer the case. I have since disconnected and I'm part of the streaming revolution like everyone else. I've realized I've had to navigate and make some changes about where I want to watch my content and where I can get my content, and still feel like I'm connected to the outside world. And figuring out for me what has been interesting, where I can get my news, which I think is what helps me to feel connected. Not that I'm sitting watching the news 24/7, but needing to just get that hit of information so that I make sure that things are okay, and then I can keep moving on. And how does this connect to loneliness? Well, before the pandemic, there were studies that were showing high incidences of loneliness around the world. And I was intrigued to find out that those spikes at the beginning of the pandemic and the lockdowns seem to have subsided, so that there has not yet been a dramatic increase in loneliness as a result of this pandemic. And with studies and reports, each one of us as individuals have our own experiences. I have had definite experiences of loneliness during this pandemic, being that I'm sheltering in place alone. And I've also noticed that coronavirus and the pandemic and the lockdown are shining a light on things that were true even before the pandemic. So for me, I've lived alone for a long time, so I can't necessarily put all of this on Corona, much as we would like to do with so many things. This situation is having us take a look at, if we're willing, what our lives were like before the pandemic and what are the things that we would like to shift and change. As was noted in these studies and reports, in fact, community in some ways is either staying the same or increasing, because we know that physical isolation does not necessarily have to mean social isolation. So when I have those moments of feeling alone and disconnected, I can make the choice to reach out to a friend. And so I have definitely had my girls' night connections on Zoom. I've had phone conversations with people, which I know it sounds weird. You remember the phone is actually something besides streaming and swiping. It actually is a device that you can talk to people on. So I definitely don't want to make light of this situation. And if you are experiencing isolation and loneliness, I want you to know that those feelings are real and there's no need for shame or guilt. And I hope that you can begin to consider who are the people that you can reach out to increase your social connection. And it may be different people than you would have reached out to in the past. In some ways, this situation can also help us to form new bonds, new connections, identify people with whom we have things in common that we didn't know before. So, those are my thoughts on community, connection, and isolation. And if you have content streaming ideas, I'm open to those as well. Take care, be well, and we'll speak again soon. So what is your takeaway from this week's Financial Fridays segment? What might you do differently around your money and your mindset? For more financial advice, you can check out Suki's podcast, Invest Singh, where I also share tips on his Wellness Wednesdays segment. If you enjoyed this episode and haven't already subscribed, you can do so on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to listen. You can also connect with me on Instagram at Coach_Colette for more inspiration on personal growth and wellness. Tune in next Friday for another episode and get ready to start within to finish strong.